Happy Thursday. We're live here. Introduce my panel. I got George Nagoji.
Patrick.
What to it? Gamaga. We have our translator. Hey, good day. So today, I wonder if they hear me. I don't want to invest it. Want to invest it.
Never. Yeah, turn it up.
Hey, hey, there we go. I say invest it. Okay, good morning, everybody. What was when I had? And I just finished introducing our panel. And today we have a special guest on our program, and his name is Kristan Straub. I guess he's the CEO of Ring of Fire Metals, and we thought we'd have him on the program today, to hear his side of the story. We're not here to, I told him specifically, we're not here to roast them or anything of that sort, but, like, what are they doing? And I think it's important for the people that hear out in the territory to hear from their view exactly what they're up to, what they're doing, what their long-term plans are, everything, so that we know. Everybody will know. It's more like, for me, it's an educational experience to hear the in and outs of what they're doing. But we'll ask them questions, and having spoken to him before, going through this, and I told him, like I said, we're not here to, to roast them alive or anything like that. We want to hear what Bring Up Fire Metals, what their intentions are and whatnot, for us to know, and so I'll have to translate it.
I've been the testimony. I hamagito ginto in me when he called my husband and take us to Monhegiona, Wyloo, Hishnahati on a ma, Kaishapat Stona, Pishnahati, no Gastinahati, Panama, Pitos Ishnahati, Panegomaganama, Kistiapat, Sun Gaitacohante, and the Mahete, Kausta Piegi, no, and they how. Nani with the hay in the pego, Hegumant, the Mehandit, the Histacohan Makistiapat, the Sun, Economy and Gaviano Motta Master Pantante, Tosuke, Tutsagatin. Give which Master Kitchipechi to stated to Kitchipechun to Stahote, Kitchipechuista, Mestike, Conatante, Watu, Tahekanameno, Eshnakon, and the Canameno Tapat, Sun, or Monina Conto. Emi manin maguin western to in a maguin guitar to yes pogo, Kitchicus can no master in a hand to chicks, toastin as a tostiga take a sapogo station out on again a man. Monahiki and the gista go into Mahete out the big, Masuetano.
Yeah, amigo Santa. So right now we're just waiting for him to call in, and so, but as you know, the reason why we did this, we're not. I want to establish one thing, right from the get-go here. We're not here to take sides or any of that sort, but rather, like you say, to have Kristan Straub on the program to explain what Ring of Fire is all about, Ring of Fire Metals and everything, and so we do have Kristan Straub on the line now, and I guess we have him on the line there, so we're gonna have him introduce himself, and what we're gonna do is.
I'm sorry, I don't hear Ivan, or I don't hear anybody else right now.
Yeah, but they can hear you. You can go ahead.
Yeah, you can.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, bonjour. My name is Kristan Straub, CEO for Wyloo here in Canada, and we're looking to advance the Eagle's Nest project. And I'd like to say thank you, Ivan, for the invite and the opportunity to speak this morning. I know this has been a couple of months of discussions back and forth between yourself and other members with Mushkegowuk Council, so I would just like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to have a discussion today, and I'll leave it with that for translation.
Yeah, Kristan Straub does in a house and one and a big game between Okama, we know Kamahatam and the men of his chapat soon, Monamanus to turn this in a house on Gation and had it to Sotel Chapum. Monandos Chiges Costo. In the noise in the house on the north in a Kiminaka no woman out and a Menagamati winters. Ekumaka ni hamaga ni namagan to kamagastin to ndi ang sakine sumagi gipetun to namagan od mi gwestte on hai pena kichi we anamota hutun to nestina namaga utapatesun.
Okay, thank you, Kristan. And perhaps, maybe you can introduce the company and explain a little bit where they're from, what they're doing, what they're doing in Australia. I think you're from Australia, the company, and what, lead us up to a few questions that I may have for you.
Kukuitsi me magaipen mahti ko sa pagwanamutan na magitapat son na kay ko company ka China na magap kay siya pat sinta kanon ete o sana mante waski waschi magana na company Australia kay tsaka ke how aski wihta maga na matani tota mek me chitanti me china pat na no hanta te ano mota ki ko ten me isna ko na ko taski no.
Okay, he's going to come on the line now. And
2022, the current company Wyloo purchased all of the shares and purchased the company of Noront and purchased all of the assets. And one of those assets, the reason behind the acquisition, was for the assets of the Eagle's Nest deposit and the chromite deposits within the Ring of Fire region. Now, Wyloo is an Australian company. It is a company that is part of a larger group of companies headquartered by an ownership group called Tatarang, and that is the ownership enterprise of a family business headed up by Andrew and Nicola Forrest. Andrew and Nicola Forrest also have ownership in an iron ore company called Fortescue Metals Group. They are the world's fourth largest iron ore producer today in Australia. I'll pause for translation.
Hamagaito nete na tapos chimakanto na meno company ka patas nete mante waski Australia ka tsaka tigeto. Eko maga kante maga gipe chitos teo nishtana nishwe papahaki utana hekana mena masagagi shopahata hekana meno tega istako hemona hekiun we know agachi no static mesuen hega istako henete mona hekiun anama mekaswatstun pega chagati mona hekiun antega istako kuttaki maga asini maga ishutana kano chaka ishapakitana kano chaka kwanama emamu panike kutanaga Ekishama mona hekana meno ataskiuno. Ekumaga nete maga kiuschapano eto na meno peyakute no ukamaga tamago pan meno igikistachaka asiniga isno chimestinete manteoski. Ekuteniga tuschapasako magahanama kaisha patisia heto hantosan no rantas togani pan isnakate panaskatwailo maganos chakati on magampaniga. Magwanis na kaso tsaka nosta nagawino amaswe ka na nakatuenta ka hindi kishi apatas na no kape panigin magisti apataso nati siya istakon tika istakon kotak mo na higiyo nante how ano magkaswatis tuma na guys nakata ikon nest.
yeah, thank you. Well, I think I'll take advantage of this time having Kristan Straub here on the program, and let us talk about the Ring of Fire itself. We understand, as you said, Ring of Fire Metals, being gigantic as it is, and subsidiary companies that are from Australia, and so you are a big mining company, and but if I can ask you, to get to the Ring of Fire area. When's your actual startup date and your infrastructure build up and whatnot? Educate us on how things are coming along there, and like I say, once you finish, and I'll shoot off another question to you, and Angela will translate.
Mapit na may tewa ipin kuy chumitanan po kuy itong kaskintin na masyaka na mapapat so na company ka was chitipenta ko siya katipenta may kito kumagamawa chumaki kon kawi kaskinta mahumuis chiya na Ring of Fire mona higio apat son gishipako. Tanti muistisnako nesta maka tanti speaking ischapanigapan. Nesta maka gitiano mutahan higitchikis no market kiguanan taga anemeno kiguanan na maihitako hienta kiguasiniago tinana husapo kiguana wina matatu ihtame ego kitchihem ego kitchimastoho.
Okay.
Great questions, Ivan. I would first start off that as Wyloo, we've taken the approach and the approach of our predecessor group, Noront, to work very closely with the First Nations within the region. And in this particular case, we work very closely through memorandums of understanding with Martin Falls First Nation and Wawatay First Nation. We outreach to other First Nations within the region to create an open and constructive dialogue on the activities that we're conducting. And our collaboration and the work that we have done with Martin Falls and Wawatay in the early parts is centered around exploration activities, but most importantly around the environmental assessment of the roads. So our predecessor companies had done a lot of work around the baseline data collection and the planning for a potential north-south road. And when Martin Falls and Wawatay expressed the interest in taking on the environmental assessment proponency, we've transferred all of that information across to those groups. And now what people see that in the current form is in the form of 3 environmental assessments that are led by the First Nations. And while we don't participate in those environmental assessments as proponents, we participate through our partnership with the First Nations, and that's the Martin Falls Community Access Road, that's the Wawatay Supply Road, each respectively the proponency of each First Nation, and the joint proponency for the Northern Road Link. Now, to your question on our development plans and timeline, our development plans and timeline, again, are guided by the interaction that we have with Martin Falls and Wawatay First Nation, and our plans in there associated with the environmental assessment on the roads and with the hopes and the potential for the environmental assessment to be conducted and be successful, and the communities to make a decision that these communities would like to proceed with the development of roads. Our business plan is built on that level of consultation and that level of partnership with the First Nations. So the very first part of it is predicated on the roads. I'll pause there, and I can speak to timelines afterwards after translation.
Okay, thank you.
Ta buena tuina iguana ma ke Wyloo ka chiga take to mystery cute ni ke ogo pane we hawana ma ka speciake na ma no rand kan tasto ka isin no district ogo pane we know ma cute no magana meno e ko ma ka siya no mo chiga take ma gito ne o kon tasto in ni shwin no ski ka ya no mo ta hwe pa hwe ko ma ka na ma ko hi how Kito Tamago, Ashaki Pigeon Stano, and Mr. Gagishana Natu, Skanchagatik, Manaski, Haishi, Homaga Haishana, Hokowaska, Masuyaski, Kinanatu, Skanchagatil, Tanti, Kishnako, Kisasmaki, Henoginist, Bogotanti, the Sky Makahaski, Hiteke, and the Magashana Hatamanaki, one. Kawahiu and Nishwana just chikemaga, Kemakoska just chikema, Fogoaska, Gaishishi, Homakahaski, Heguanaminogaki, no static, Shaku Magui, no Amo, no Stiashiti, or Gespietanato, Geskenchagati, Hokeguana. In the Noganiki Tipanawega, get the note static, and Anato, Geskenta, Heginato, Mescahikote. Monoinos Tiashiti, Shaku Magi, Spiga, get the Gistano, Hegopata Magata, Pagano, Pata Heganameno, Gagis, Masanamenogue, Tante Gaisha, Mescahiki, Tentomoge, Kihinenogue, Kiano Mochagate, Panoma Monaheki, Apatason, Shaku Mago, Samigiano Mochagate, Mescano. Mescano and the Maki, keep him at Tamoki, Apatstano, Fogomasuishi. Apatisio Mescano, Vision Hatamogandite, Higita Tamoganama. And the Menamago cheated Tahiganama, Apatisios Cano in a hand, Pogochiki, and Panetmanautan, and Poguanamato, Hangaishna, his Pogista Mescano, Gaisha Papa Matamogito Hana. Yukan meno samagagiano motahuapan yukan estigiatuija wichio emi mahkestoapano vinano ketonanahotan hin waskante waskakotagishkona kanagaistako hientitehiga ustapitsagugo hau wepehuego maga akogionen no kasegi anomotamo akupananmeno. Eko magagetiano mutaman magakisko ito muna wino awina tos chito etchikjiate kestachaganmeno kipe hewa kito enzo hokaisha meskamenzagagina nato keskanetamenjemisuishi askihitehe uhine no eko tana magagietos tesaki chiknestuina wichapatisima chako hegano bastahe ko hamasna hegana kai kishna gostano anenege.
Okay, thank you, Angela. The next question I think people would like to know, and it would be the lifespan of the mine cycle itself. And a lot of people want to know. Have been asking me, is it an open pit mine or is it an underground mine? And if it's underground, how far? What's the depth of your you're gonna go? And I'll just use those two questions for now.
Ayaha magito mingwes magito ay pananhigagia menjego magakutak magana magekon kawinato keskenta magito meschetan nakokwetcha makokenenogito tanti muistigishna ohana magischieto skewen wattehan hnapukotisna konokechmana kaoschoutenekatiki kon kaiswapasta mega isna kohi tahihaukasia kanteka toschi uttahikatiki konisto puku wattehan hnapuko quizás nuatejana patistano gente pistoe papampaneke guane monegatik tani no cojitos te catame gente genes tani no cojis pisna o jesapo tante que cocan ma pistoe tomo gente tame haski ho watejana nagaita he anamina open pit gaita he kwakitwina namite he gasiste ko apastena o takaisna o Kchapatas on esto kohutatamens and depogatus tenasipanegochapan shakakinogon panagaisha hequanomenuina magachagate gomaguino what the han is panopogante in the Mexico napatsta and epimpanike. We go get some magapotaniki speech how is speech nagatame hitehi aski heguano nestomach speech chicken ogwe.
So I've been following the collection of the baseline data information along the roads that is being currently collected. The proponents of the road will file their impact statements. And why I start here is because this really gets to the timeline of the activities. So as they file their impact assessments and if they decide to proceed to permitting and construction of the road, what we have timed for the Eagle's Nest deposit, which will be an underground mine, is that we would start construction in 2027. We would plan to start some early site preparation activities in 2026 and start construction of what would be the operation in 2027. Now, that operation is designed as an underground mine, and we are currently today going through a feasibility study to frame and design what would the various pieces of infrastructure look like and how would the mine be constructed. And so today, based on our current work, it would be an underground mine accessed via a tunnel from surface that would then descend down. And you asked the question about how deep it would go. The current known ore zone or mineralized zone of nickel extends down to about 1,600 meters below surface. So that's a mile down below surface. So, and it is very much shaped like a pencil standing up. And for listeners to think about, it's about 3 times the height of the CN Tower. So if you stuck 3 CN Towers on top of each other, in terms of a visual, that would be roughly about how deep that deposit would be. We decided on an underground operation simply because the feedback that we had heard over the years of this project being in place was that communities did not want to have open pit mines on surface, and the other key component of feedback was communities did not want to see tailings disposed on surface. So another key component of our underground mine design is that the materials that are produced from underground and concentrated, what are called the tailings, will be stored back underground as backfill, as cemented tailings in the areas where we're mining deeper, and or as backfill and underground openings to ensure that material is not on surface. It's not left as a legacy liability on surface. And in the underground environment, that material can be effectively encapsulated and not have any impact to the surrounding water bodies that are up on surface.
Kikokechimen gan mamuistike tutsigati gumabat sunduuskat magan himeskanoa iguan hivitamagan motakvikitietus tano hoban. Keki shnagona kutanum kakakitstano mana bittamai kumaka kishkoan ma ketinutstano hiban hapatsuan nishetana kutos tatiko kui notstano noban kishnago kumaka nishetana niswase papuan getamachipan kumaka shakut kaitit inno kakishi mustinetahik Ekawini ostentamente hekwina antepo wispe mahite kaisna ohana makasia kwathan tisna ochus ekamon ostentamente magana magisna konen ekwana makawi instituta hekwathan no kawi ostachik Guatemala kaisna ofogante kaisna costano hekutaki kaisna nutstegano mon hekewni ekumagana sini Asini antikis chieta mejestawa nasini kawinu chahachike kumaka kichimistehemaka shakutantita ishakutawa na mupanagana menuta patistawa no kis isnakuhitos chit aste chikatame haski kikiskintina na manana makakis chishpa kwa haukachimatik Toronto kuspatu ipanenano manasien tower kaitahik Ni swai na kuhan na mena te pahikagi win na kuhishi kutaw na huwapan na mena kay konong nisto. Kumaga masanay ka natin mama na po kay taskitik ikuan na po kuhin na kuhan na matik tikas tawa po kuhan na matik isya kutaw na katik pa na naman kay kuhan ka utahiki magah. Kumakito kinino ikaw santawenta kupiwan ni kaniniwan ta kontak po kitisyo pahikat kitisyo pakita nagatike kan hikapiyo hikatike kikona ka pisa hikate wasana ne kikona ka muna hostana sunya ne uttenestan taka sa shekostan pokana makikon kana na to pasta kikani sunya na sinienta kistia sini kumagani hipiwa hikana Monino sentuenta magene no kante konta puchi pakitena katene kita host kumaga itenta kichi hauka kates post nanasini kichi shina costano kante tamas ma kichi pakitena kateke anhe pione kana kwani tweet testo no esa que no heyemo kanan monamesuengi que son shaguna kaisi que so ma ocho kaisi kai ma ocho como kawi shuista mesuege kwani shina ho kon magau Kawihtam. Tell them not to say it. Ask him not to.
Talk too long.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. The other thing too, and I think the people need to know is what minerals are you extracting, and if it's nickel, what grade is it? As you know, there are different types of grades of nickel, and what exactly. And that'll lead you to, the roads that are being built, and with Martin Falls and Wawatay. And so I'll just start with that question, and I'll shoot you another question right after that.
Tani muistike ko sinian higana to magic tanis na ko sinti tanis pi how tanis pi chia kesunuchian higa monohachike ko sinia. Iguan higawina tu kiskenta kana meltusti nesta na meska no gano mutigati gawios estano handiki tatomuke ya anhiniso anenoski gasista kohe. Pe wina maga tatuista moa kaukamawatan heki ko ke kuya sini muistigana na to ama gawi muno hachike sangito.
the Eagle's Nest deposit are principally nickel, copper, and then small amounts of cobalt, platinum, and palladium. So nickel and copper are roughly, call it 1.8% nickel, in and around that range, and a little bit less than 1% copper in through there. And when we take the value of all of the elements, the nickel, the copper, the cobalt, the platinum, and the palladium, based on the current prices, you have what we call a nickel equivalency of roughly about 3% nickel. So if someone wants to understand the value of the material on a per ton of ore basis, it's roughly about 3% nickel per ton of ore in terms of value. But because it's a multi-commodity deposit, we look at it on that particular aspect and what that contribution is. It's clear to us that the nickel is where the highest value material is, Ivan, and that's because that nickel today is sought after for the utilization of nickel in batteries for battery electric vehicles. The second deposit, which the Ring of Fire is also very well known for, are the chromatite deposits. And we would look in the future to developing a chromite deposit that is immediately adjacent to Eagle's Nest, which is the Blackbird deposit. And that deposit, when we talk about the amount of chrome that's in the mineral, in the rocks that are there, is around 30 to 33% chrome in those rocks. And that's what the U.S. company, Cleveland Cliffs, was interested in, the other Canadian company, KWG, and of course ourselves, which are the deposit holders within the region for those deposits.
I have ito na kay matnapiw nanako na gusto ka nagasinig nanako na gusto ka nagasinig ano tahatik kausawa piskis chiki kumagasa tanagaga kaya ko wawasi apes ke panchikto ngwite bugis na gusto chika nagamasta sinig nanako na gusto no anhegano tahatik usame magano sawa sinig ko na mawat kay kano apa magano dito ka uchiapat sima ka hemisweki ko na kapin panikimanagan utos ka usistano tapos ko kitishna ko ni kanite he uchapan se hiapat tahipan tense ka tio no ka how was a how ka wa how Wasakhu apis kisitas kawasakhu apis kaka piwa apis tuhan ikuan isna ko sa tanasini nanahoni ko apamawa kisna ko sa tikmanas ka winin no sinis na kaso na pek how winin no sini managaita kanot kamame no ko mananta ke kuan ka isna ko kakikinesta ko kuan winin no sini ta kanona no kumagano kawasa ko sa tuwasa ko sini usawa peska sini kumaga shishki hishna kon pe kana sini anta ekwana shiti shitpanetanta ekwana makamba wats magi kwana gayana mo magano teton hewa anaka usawa peska sini hawa ka usawa pesko hak manaki kon kaishna ko he kon hitu hana Ekon hikaki kanoa pa mistik ke kutama ke ustikis kinchika tika nama eku hoto gano chahachik me kwatuina negano staya hao ikunest nama makaswatis ni tono ni nanambago isnehachika tika pongan hatos ke una ke ustikis kintahan nama ke ku company ekon ito kaya matnapyo tatu istama minan hepechena ke taitutahit.
Hey, me understand. Well, as in our prior conversation, I told you I'm a member of Winnis First Nation, and the river system there, it goes right down. We're at close to the mouth of the river, and another First Nation peoples are very concerned also from Matobasket and the Skandaga, and I cannot speak for them, nor will I. But I can speak on behalf of my First Nation, because it will, if anything does happen, it will affect us drastically. And the question I have for you is, other than Martin Falls and Webakwe, do you have other First Nations that you're going to negotiate with, and along the way, because it does impact the people that are there from Atobaskat at the river there, Atobaskat River there, and as for myself, like the Winnisk River is right close there, and have you been contacting, or will you in the future be, willing to sit down with the peoples involved and people that say they will be impacted in as I said, I cannot speak for them, but I will speak on behalf of Winnisk First Nation because it does concern me, and what's your answer to if anything should happen? I know you're taking every precaution, but something will happen, and so are you meeting with the neighboring First Nation people, the groups that have issues and whatnot? Are you going to meet with them? That's the question I want to ask.
Hamagitewa ben big man men ke kon gawi ko kwetsi himia baneto iha uskatu itamo wande utaskan is twins ke hete he ko magana ma gawi sia patsna no kana ma pepanege kistia patsun de mehete he and ma ko na ma wet te hueste kana ma ya when is you shipping persona con antito e quando me no makama metonento mehikiani nei to tanti ki kisas mke ko anehe que chemeste henina nan kapaka miska konan nesetam miska ko ya hiteo e quando nina na magawi ko kiskenta man to ka giwista mo na naite mo na maguina sa ko ni mista mo kan ke kotta ki kama metonento mehiko chignesto ino atopes ka to haita chignenok Nestuino amamme tunenta mehiku kummatsakin matane maamme hantitehi uhtapitsikitehi and henisto kuttakia monna kunkia mista mook tänne tenta mookuitu. Ja kun mäkin kuone meina kauina tukiskin tanti mäkäki kun pas pepanniki pesihe kun. Ja kun mäkä mettehi maamme uhtapitsikki uttaamiskakutsik nesittämi Nesitame hiwewen hitehe. Kuttakiek namaka kaya mahawakin no kitti waskan titehe majakan nekinaskan takaka ohtapitsik nistuino amametunen että mehiku kumino. Kistiapat suunnakaan mutsakatinik. Kitta ja mahawak na namaka nista maka kapitsu ihtamawak na nista neka kuttakiek no kitti.
Thank you. And Ivan, as a First Nation member myself, I fully understand the why behind the question is asked and what it's based on, from the region and from past experiences with First Nations within the region for industrial development and the challenges that have been associated with that and a lack of consultation for many of them. We've actively reached out to many of the other First Nations within the region, and now here, Ivan, you can respect that I won't name all of the groups that are out there, but we actively reach out and request an open dialogue with the First Nations that are out through there. And I respect that we have been publicly called out by groups like Mushkegowuk, and we have an open offering of discussion at any point in time. If Mushkegowuk, likewise for Atawapaskat, if Atawapaskat is so inclined to engage and have a discussion about it, we're willing to be there, looking for an invite to come to the community and to meet with Chief and Council or to meet with community members. And like I said for today, very happy to answer in an open and transparent manner the questions that people have. And to your question on the potential for activities to have impact on the river systems and the ecosystems, one of the fundamental tenements, one of the fundamental bases of the project is to develop a project that is co-led and co-managed from the project's perspective, so today around designing what the operation looks like, through to the operations portion of the project, through to the closure. And that co-led and co-managed process is a process that we are engaging with on a First Nations basis. Now, of course, Martin Falls and Wawatay today are in those discussions, and we would open and welcome those discussions to other interested First Nations that would like to participate in that. Because I believe it's important through that process that the First Nations members of the region have an opportunity to present what their thoughts, their beliefs, their view is on what the design from a project should look like, how it's managed through operations, and even before it starts, understand what it should look like when the operation is completed and it would be returned to the area would be returned to its natural state. And I think that's very important because you also expressed, although your plans are for nothing to go wrong, how do you manage when things go wrong? Part of co-management with First Nations is ensuring that community members have the capacity, have the training, have the necessary knowledge to participate in the active and ongoing monitoring and understanding. As we all see in our own natural environments, we can see patterns before we have consequences and responding to those patterns before there are consequences. Now, we can look at that from an operational perspective, whether that's through water, and from a design perspective on water, we're designing an operation that would not be in a position to release treated water back into the environment, so we would recycle it. And those are things that industry can and does do now in many other areas, both in the high Arctic environment, where it's, again, a very sensitive environment, but also in the boreal forest, in some of the larger operations down towards the Sudbury region, for instance, like a new gold mine down in that area that has fully recycled processed water. So, I hope that answers your question in terms of how we'd like to engage other First Nations who are not yet at the table and how we are engaging with the First Nations who are there today. And I hope that people take away from it that it's an open invite, and we are ready and willing to come to communities and have that discussion and engage on that.
Oh, thank you. That's one of the reasons why I asked you to come on the radio is to more so educate us what's going on there. What's your startup plans and whatnot, lifespan of the mine and whatnot, and that's a very important point that you brought up about meeting with other groups other than the ones specifically involved. And so, I'm glad you brought that up, that other groups or other First Nations neighboring that are going to be affected or have issues. Yeah, you're willing to meet with them, and but the question is, I know we're gonna get reaction from that statement, and so I'm looking forward to dialoguing with Ring of Fire Metals and yourself and from other groups, and so I'm glad you said that. Okay, I can translate.
Misuiningi yamahana nakituni huinite hekotagina no dastogakin doendo menchikichu awistama mischimoichigai kawito tagatinik ekumaga kisaspen magan doenta joven ekotagin no chitostean kaishista chikichitosteo kesteto ehenga kashkestanan kichantuichi mima kischekashwinigi mima chikne hekotagi masuene noschamaskamakaustapenje ikiwa wistamo chokotante kishnako hepanuman patson gano mochagate que cuando manesta kishwistama topa negawina que wina tu que skenta hitante muestiki hepan andemeno maga kaishi andemeno maga kisha kwichi minete one haipena que cuando dije que te paspepane que cuando yo estoy nacional cheque más ni pije esto pogaski heteje e cuando me gaustanato enta cochina que tu enchacate que tu que chitana que chistano que cuando catispane que cuando que tu chacate que no nestano me que tu tajopan que chitana que chistate que tishna con ni pino me suepo que cuando Egumagwina manipika mawache panestoche kendiga patstache monowina anamataishe monowina anamataishe nasipewe pahamagogosipi hetehe pitama wenta managana nagato paschakati taka menagwini piegwani gitu chakati tapiskotan himana pio apisko kate maostona kate ke gawina wepinakaneha Ikaw inuwi pinagkanakaiso pinagkati kita panoasan na mawatastano na hepiopus ko na ganay kumakasit piopus ko kaya ko nagaysi itayangis ko na watastika ka na napugo. Ano mamakaos ito tsika tiki ita piapat takuho kaya ko na hew. Hamon isu inisonat ihapo kasi nagatiwisane. Ikaw na makapugis na kostano kapanan naman niping. Pamasi nistwe pahikati kan dito hitsa mahasuko kaya sipi hete kisko kana pascagati kitte pepai ha kamen tincagati ke ga ke kwanan ta pischapon ke chista ko he kwan meno ke to chagati ke to chagati ke ga ke kwan mon ina kon ta pote se te sui sui penagati o kitchana na ga to chagati ko komse ke kwan ga isna ko ke kwan ga na ga tstano mane ga ke chipiu panago yes ke uchne sona ta he kwan pischapon ke chis panak Iguana magagaita tayo pa ni Iguana magagawi nato kaskenta mapan Iguana meno kikisi nato kaskenta hikinanok Iguana magagi kukwitsa metanet to kitsuwista mekkoyask kitsitipato mostoa chik tanti muistuato tahik tanti muistikisanago hanna mapattaso napat apahikati kwitnista kietisnago Humagana na magito na napewis piyete kisistano no ko panin me apat na no ko ani min chiki kiyo isna ko hepana na masking ka kisna ko ka kisna ko no ko pane uskat pa masiete tape ko tahigano
Did he hear is he on? I think. All right, thank you. The other thing, and as I mentioned, I guess I guess your scheduled book's gonna fill up now. Now that you mentioned that you're willing to meet with the groups, and I think it is important. It is of most importance that I guess like you say to meet with the communities and the landholders, the stakeholders involved, and so I think, as I said, your schedule's going to fill up, and I'm glad that you said that you're willing to meet with them. But is there an Aboriginal department there that handles negotiating with First Nations? As I worked for De Beers, and we had an Aboriginal department which I worked for, and we did all the negotiating and whatnot. Is there something of that component within Ring of Fire Metals?
Ihtananine nungan taganut stikika siapat tsakana nagato entahnista gavichiapat simetaketto kwanina gaisnago De Beers kapat siapan kwat ihtapan nagai mistamake to tagai kat kanoa pastahe kwano etispan ke katana nagato entahistana nantina no to komaga metuna mata tekisponas nate ke mas nahigan spiete mas namanita kanon dato ke tisna na to ke tisma mo pista he house ko nakanaski ke tinto ye mahaten no ke chano mota mod mo tanti sna ko na ko meno tatski no.
So yes, Ivan, we do. Earlier on, you mentioned that we're a big company, but while our roots and our founders are big companies, here in Canada, Wyloo is a relatively small operation, but we do have a group of individuals who work on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, with community consultation, community connection. We have two individuals up in Thunder Bay, a fellow by the name of Ryan Tuomi and a fellow by the name of Clyde Muniz, who are actively out in the communities or meeting with communities and community members, listening and understanding what some of the concerns are and bringing them back. We also have, through our sustainability group that's headed up by a gentleman by the name of Steve Crozier, we do actively engage in the discussion around whether that's a memorandum of understanding with certain First Nation groups, or whether in the cases of, say, for instance, with Wawatay and Martin Falls, we discuss further what the development and our development objectives are. And navigating it today, but directly moving towards things like the understanding the potential impacts, the potential benefits, and many people commonly know that as impact benefits agreement negotiation. So yes, we have the people that are there to do that work, and we have three members, including myself, that actively get out and have these community meetings and have discussions. And today, this radio discussion is an opportunity to again extend that invitation to others. So I think the feedback that we hear from community members is a broad spectrum. We hear back from some community members that are opposed to development, but we also hear back from community members that are not against development but want to understand what conservation looks like. And then there are other groups that say we want both conservation and development. We want to see development in our region so that we can have some economic benefits for our communities and for our people, so that we can build some sort of form of self-sustaining models for our communities that are based on the resources within our traditional regions and our traditional territories. And we just want to work in a collaborative manner with the communities around that, not respecting that that people are going to have diverse opinions, and that ultimately communities need to make a decision as to whether or not this is something that as a broad community, that the community supports, for us to advance.
Tao ganan tainen no ka patsahakan o tsaketon ni shogan tasniga ispano gwente iskuna kanaski he yamaha tsakena no tasniga to istamo tsaketa isto tsakatenik ito honesta a pesar se no panano mito na meno ka siya patuina na meno company no ka kumakiet na hapano maga na may spiga o tinige tsukumaga tiano mo tsakate kumagasya patuson. Esta honesta testkawi ekagawin tawenta hekeneno kichista koneno kumeno apatsuno no to esta honesta ateskamos tinta hekchema taneni kanete hita pichke ustemeno panheko chekaisi kaista siheo ke kietos chepamacho ke kietos che Kaskesta maso cheke kona giatia patsta chikni how his piete kaskesta to ke chiete ma wasta pitta hegana meno how music is you ne hete hege so in mystic sagud ma grista o gateste gana to venta hegana meno eto and he no meno ke chista kona ne kepan me misko choko kai tento mo panano he ha teste gagan to venta hegat man esta gamostin esta hegita pecheko ke kon ke ustemeno pan hoye ke ustemeno pan hekunano hepan kai tenta hepamat so ne hete he ustepamat so again ke ustepamat so agano ne ke to chiapat sta choko kai si sta choko taskiwa ho teneni waskiwa Iguasaniana Montagate que tu anima yahoo anima miskut managaitono heguan yahoo eutenagate and take my kiwi to taki when hete hega pakitanagate ki ustamano panhiku in the no egonama egonomenoga no motahicutanus checomaga Chikmaganigi, Tasniga, Tasnapkat, Shanenta Wama, Yamahatsako, Hokotagian, Henostimaskamaha, Tanjina, Noa, Vista Marching, Westani, Te Watu Chagati, Gote, Tantigishnago, Homatoski, and Ganamo Chagati, Mischigi, Taispan Hegonano, Nestagati, Speech Chapanik, Egoni. Konito ito na gaya bete mamo yuista mo kukuan meno mono ina muestra tata pero chiquitito mamo poco tento mon.
Yeah, maybe so. You know this the war. Wawa said this, and that the wars in the Ukraine and Russia do have a deep impact within it. It comes right down to us in our territory, our territories, traditional territories. And the impact of those wars is having on this world is having an impact on us. And as you know that Russian exports nickel as well, and more pressures within our country itself that we're going green. And they have a deadline date of 2050, 2040 to go green. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that the extraction of those metals are going to go through those winter roads. There's how are you going to extract the raw materials? Where are you going to go send them the raw materials? And how are they going to pass through the territory? Are they being trained out, or are they going to? What's your knowledge on that, and how they're going to bring it out, process it, bring it to Sudbury, and how does that all intertwine?
How kiskinte na anente mante waski ka Hispana kanuskaki shika kama shikano ke gona magama metunenta mehekuya hito ke katu kwanis na hite hiuti ke pakas ke paketa kuskake makakaishita hite he ekano bastamane taskina neteo and hege kwana ka bentis biche Mashi to Chicago, Ukraine ski, Haita Chicago, Russia ski. Economy, Kayanamota, Moto, Brain, Tante Maca, Tante Maca Muiche, get to Eco, go to name, go to the Mako, Hokekwana, go to Neko, Gassinia, Kitchipim Pesuchmaga, Poponemescona, Kitchipim Peteco, Kegomaganis, Tante used to sharpus. Tanti used to Sapos Chicago. Pitamana and the Taispan Haganona, Kishako Hagano, Chagandite, his at Brigaitako Hashako Higamaka, Egutina and Patamagis, Wish Hagano, Chicago, Dastoke, Gon Gautan out, Tenacasinia, Kegona Men and Nikan, Pokite, Hinnikan, but then get Ispanakaski, Hete Hito. Kaya pagkas chicken noise na iti, tapit ni ganit tihi ni shatunan ne metuna ipapuhinis ni shatunan niya na metunata papuhi. Aswi na metuna ka na kotes ko kasi nano na minago. Ikaw na minagano mo.
Certainly. First, Ivan, in order to what we believe today have a viable business, the operation would have to be connected via an all-season road. So it wouldn't be sufficient to have a winter road to be able to bring the supplies in and take the concentrate products out. The volumes are too large to host and to ship out via winter roads based on our current studies. That's unlike many diamond mines that people in the region might be familiar with Victor, where you can bring in a year's worth of supply on a winter road and then fly the product out, the mined product of diamonds out on an aircraft or in some other manner, or fly gold bars if it was a particular gold operation. But the concentrate would have to move via a semi-truck with a trailer on it, much like you see on many of the highways that transport goods across Canada. And those vehicles would travel down the road into the south, where they would reach Highway 11. Now, as of today, it's yet undetermined as to whether or not that material would get onto a rail on rail line, or would continue by a truck down to a place where the nickel would be transformed. And on the transformation of nickel, if memory serves me correctly, outside of call it Indonesia for the transformation of nickel today in Indonesia, there are maybe 5 places in the world that transform nickel. You have the 2 smelters in Sudbury, the smelter for Valley and the smelter for Glencore. They've been there for respectively over 100 years and probably 85 years in the case of the Glencore smelter. You have the Valley Long Harbor processing facility in Newfoundland. There's a processing facility in Finland today. And beyond that, there's some processing facilities in Russia and in Norway. Beyond those, the Australians just announced today that their nickel smelter will be coming down. So that's the extent of capacity for treatment of nickel-bearing materials that exist today. Now, we've also looked at the opportunity as our company to create a set of processing facilities in the Sudbury area, and we signed a memorandum of understanding on access to land with both the city of Sudbury as well as consulting with the First Nations in that region prior to developing a project. So again, based on our first principles of outreach to First Nations first, to speak about what our plans are in engaging in a memorandum of understanding on how we will interact and how we will advance business discussions. and potential project discussions. But it's very premature to talk about, other than a memorandum of understanding, that a new processing facility in Sudbury, because it's predicated on having all-season roads and that being acceptable to the people within the region. It's predicated on the project itself being acceptable and permitted to advance. That's Eagle's Nest, both advance on a financial basis, but on a social and environmental acceptability basis. So, and then you have the third hurdle, which is the financial viability of a new project in Sudbury. So, based on where nickel is today, and nickel's in a difficult position because of a significant amount of overproduction in Indonesia, and that Indonesian and Chinese material making its way to market, that's a challenge that our industry faces. And as Canadians, we face this challenge, the cyclical nature of resources and resource extraction, both on a commodity price and a demand piece. So the future demands look very high, as you said, in this green transition, and some of that's being threatened by the geopolitical activities with Russia invading Ukraine and creating constraints on supply. But you also have other countries out there, and I say countries because China is sponsoring a significant amount of nickel development in Indonesia in a non-environmentally friendly and non-people friendly manner in there. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Ei makito na magkakisi ko kits maganoto ho to mona ni na takihen popona mesna chiki bichigate go hoke kona de go tnagate we sama mesake e ko magana magaoste to chigate gano mo chigate kana meskana go yusistano ho chapane se ho pastina manake kona kapen bitike gaisna ko kama misako chapane se ko kapa piste gate go tanaki sna ko hapana me pembeso ko kasni ke jito ta gano chigante Katie shows Chigais hostic to Cassini Sudbury Bogista Gonana Magingi, Guinness Comogostan Magana Matuina Kitto Tamaki Banana Kakishovich, Hemo, Copenhagenas Comotogan, take it in a mass chicken and take it Chigita Gohanamatu, Matua, Pachistavan. Gaustako Hostako Gassini, Gaus Chia, Tia2, Panaganamaki, Mamma Shikitano, Asana Magashi, Papa Hoachik. Iguana mamaga, Ostiana Montagate, Tomoniana, Matagishna, Gonina, Chigishi, Pempesotina, Mistasini, and Matagishi Pamichigate, Guanto. Iguanishana, Gohan, and Tato, Tatoigation, and Uta House, Tenago, Asinia Gatisha, Yakisotic, Nehemante, Waski, Ganamota, China, Tehegomagas, and they didn't take Russia. We know que skendo magtante muestra guys katuta hegeben betahig nesta guys utene que chico hoge guanaga uhasnia gate isina patahachik e un poco e pomas noste que pegate que guana meno poco kama muista sagun mesue e vista que te tu chegate que panani vino kotaki ga giano motaje guana monete ngite pi hispano que chiano motamagota and him I go Pocomouch Kaki go great to me. Is be a pimpus to go Cassiniga, Pahuogano, Tenago, the host chicken tea time has kiki up at Tina, Gagis now, name at Tobscatohasi, how Gagi Monhigano, Gagi Metabano, my mam's Tassiniga and the Pupunamis and Ammonian, Matishnago, and Tuaganago, Chico, Stan, Ohanamashiko, he given Nestopogo at Nipi hit the Higitis and I go hit Chicago.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Well, it's almost 11 o'clock now. I just want to thank you, Kristan Straub, for agreeing to come on the radio with us. And perhaps, we didn't cover as much as we can, but you did educate us in a lot of areas. And but it's good to know that your door is open, to talk to people that are being affected, and that's always good to know. And like I say, I thank you very much for coming on. You're heard right through the territory. You're a famous guy now, Kristan. So if you want to say a last word before we say goodbye.
Hamagana Nascomema, Brian, and how Gagi Betty Ivan, Gagi Betty, the Stenjagi Betty, we the hot the appici, Higikis Conomon, and to Kakishwa Wistamenche Kumaga Kisas Mas Wito Yenimage Guanito Takito. As a translator there, Kristan, there's one thing that I don't agree with you. I cannot hold myself to tell you that you said once the mining is done, you want to look the land the way it was. Let me tell you something. You cannot overdo what the Creator had created this land when He created the world. That's only one teaching I want to give you. Don't ever say we're going to do it exactly the way it was. De Beers has said that, but it doesn't work like that. It doesn't look like that. It's just one education that I'm giving you. Nuihtamo pagana tagiwishnakostanon kishistahigated. Monagagipaskano gostchapamatsingagishnakostataskini ushstatmongita wasanamakito De Beers mestigagishnakojapantishnagamgagito. Daho hikon yanameno yanamotahishita shakut maga pokunui minagas kamagiunan. English. Thank you.
Miigwech, Angela, thank you for that, and thank you for the translation. And it's a very good pickup on your part, so I appreciate that feedback. Yes, I recognize we would not be able to return it to the original condition that the Creator had created the earth in. So it's very important. The intent is to return the land into a condition that it continues to be productive, it's not negatively impacted, and to be able to provide some benefit out of it. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the effort, Angela, to translate through here, and Ivan, the opportunity to answer some questions that you have, express our willingness to come to communities that invite us, that want to hear. I would suggest that please reach out. We are willing and able to come to communities on a formal or on an informal basis. And, one of the important things, and it would be, I really want to stress this, is that, asking questions like this and having an opportunity to ask questions is many people express back a fear of saying, well, this is going to be construed as consultation. You know what? We're here to answer your questions, not here to file a list to say, oh, we consulted and this is consultation today. And I hear that so often. And I just firmly believe as people, that word gets in the way of people's desire to ask and understand what's happening, and the fear of saying, oh, now they're going to be considered that we've consulted with them. And that's not the case here. When there's an understanding, and when we've progressed that relationship to a far enough point, it's then we can then start to talk about, well, is this effective consultation? That's a decision and discussion between two different parties at that point in time. But today this is information, and people need to have access to information to be able to make informed decisions. And that's really what our efforts are about, is ensuring that we can provide the information and answer the questions that the community has. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to future opportunities, and I look forward to the invites. It's been, I think we talked about this before, Ivan. Very early in my career as a geologist, I spent a summer in Fort Albany out of Wapaskit, Saskatchewan, all the way up through to Pewanak, studying the deposits that were in those areas, that the aggregate was going to be used for the roads construction in those communities, and the community utilization. So I look forward to an opportunity to get back up and see and meet the people of the region.
Okay, thank you very much, Kristan. And